once heard someone say to me, don't ever compare your inside to someone else's outside.
Very good.
And that's excellent advice for the individual, but certainly for marriage.
That's huge. And I felt like I had to fit in that box. That was it. I went in with this mindset like, okay, well, now I have to do this and I have to do this and I have to dress this way and I have to like fit into this Catholic mold because frankly, I went in so handicapped.
It was a challenge, just a few weeks, I would say, into the marriage, when we start having disagreements and realize like, okay, take care of the stuff that you need to take care of before you get into marriage and instead of thinking that marriage is a car wash, that like this is a magical ring and you put it on and like you're Frodo and you can just do all this brand new stuff.
I think you're the best wife and husband until you actually become one.
I mean, it's like putting hydrogen peroxide on a wound. It starts fizzing pretty good.
Because I was struggling so much in marriage and I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know why I was always so angry and I was just like, all the time. But on the outside to everyone, I had it together. I had that Instagram perfect thing going on, right? But man, I shut the door and I'd be a mess. But my message was still relevant. I didn't lie because it's never too late to start over. I had this huge conversion and that was my mission when I first started speaking about chastity, just screaming to the rooftops to young women, like it doesn't matter who you are, where you've been, what you've done. All that matters is where you go from here. Like God can restore you, can start over. You are worthy of love, right? No matter what's happened to you.
G'day everybody, Matt Fradd here. The reason I am sitting in the middle of this table is I am interviewing two beautiful people, Jason and Crystalinom Evert. This is the first time we've done a three people in one interview, and it was an amazing interview. I truly believe this will be maybe one of the most important interviews I've done for a long time, and it's going to bring about great comfort and healing, especially to married couples. Especially those in difficult marriages. This was a very vulnerable and intimate interview. It'll also be a blessing to those who are looking toward marriage. So watch it and please share it. Not for my sake, but for the sake of those who might stumble across it. I really, you'll see what I mean when we jump into this. Before we go any further, many of you have been subscribing to the channel, and I want to say thank you so much for that. It's a really quick, free, easy way to support the channel. So if you haven't done that yet, please click subscribe and the bell button because it really helps us out. God bless. Jason and Crystalinom Evert, this is wonderful to have you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
So I always tell this story, but I'll never tire of it. I had just met my wife maybe for 3 days, and she's wearing this chastity shirt.
So she's a keeper.
She was super cool, bright orange shirt.
Virginity rocks kind of thing?
It was one of those 90s. It said something like on the back, call me frigid, call me uptight, call me a prude. And then at the bottom it said, just don't call me for sex until you call me your wife. So it was like 90s
Where do you
sassy t-shirts.
So
I'm not playing hard to get.
Yeah. You're like,
But it was
hard to get.
But it told me what to do. So I was like, all right, well, I'll do that. But she was telling me all about chastity. And I was a Catholic for about 2 or 3 years at this point, and I didn't understand why the church asked us to same-sexual marriage. I was fine to accept it, but it didn't mean much to me. So she gives me this CD, and it was this chastity talk from Jason Evert. And I went back to my room because I wanted to have material to talk to her about the next day, and I listened to it. And it was one of your public school talks.
Okay.
So I actually thought, and this is a sad thing to say, there's no way this guy's Christian. It's too good. You know, somebody could watch a movie, you might think that. But Jason, it really blessed me tremendously, and so it's been an honor to kind of get to know you over the years, to see the great work that the two of you have done, where you'll go on stage and you, Crystalina, I think quite bravely kind of open up your life, and that's beautiful. What we want to do today is not talk so much about dating, but talk about marriage. And I think the danger for us in public ministry, whether you have a podcast or you're speaking or writing books, is that we're continually maybe willing to open up what happened back then, but not so much right now and maybe what we're going through. Mm-hmm. And so I think this is going to be a beautiful balm for married people because, you know, my wife and I do shows together and people go, oh, you guys are so in love. It's so beautiful. Yeah. And that's true. Like, we actually do have a good marriage, but we're also on our best behavior when we're doing a podcast, right? And it bothers me sometimes because I fear that there are people out there with their myriad of problems and their struggles and why isn't marriage the way I thought it would be? And I don't want people to feel alone in their struggles. And so today I thought it would be beautiful just to sort of talk about the reality of marriage, the trials that y'all have had in your own marriage, and then people have asked some very beautiful and vulnerable questions about their own marriage that we'll get to later. So thank you. And so to start, maybe we can just, I could ask, when y'all were engaged and going through marriage prep, first of all, what was that like? Did it prepare you the way you had hoped? And what was your vision? I'm sure your visions will be different of what married life would look like.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was raised in a family, and my parents been married 50 plus years, and I've never seen them fight once. I'm sure there's moments where they had their disagreements, but they must have resolved it behind closed doors in an amicable way in front of us. It was just a very peaceful, harmonious, they just got together. Well, you know, and I know some married couples say, yeah, we've been married 80 years and all we argue about is where to go have dinner. I'm like, oh, well, that must be nice. Yeah. But for us, it was different. So that was a blessing in the sense that I got to see what a really stable marriage looked like, but a curse in the sense that I don't know how to resolve conflict. And that when it hits the fan, like, what do you do? And so, yeah, when we went through marriage prep, I mean, God bless the diocese, but I don't remember really gaining much out of that at all in terms of the crosses that would await us within the sacrament of marriage, and just kind of went in there bright-eyed and bushy-tailed of like, this is going to be like living the theology of the body, and it's just going to be like an endless honeymoon, and it's been a road. And I think, you know, people look, oh, Jason and Crystal, you know, you write How to Find Your Soulmate Without Losing Your Soul, and you guys did all the theology of the body, you know, and they kind of idolize, in a sense, the idea of what they think our marriage must be, and therefore their marriage must look like as well. And it sets up, I think, a false expectation of the reality that Christ crucified is going to visit everybody in their vocation at one point or another.
And then before we get to Crystalina, I guess you shared that endless honeymoon. I guess you hoped that your marriage would look in some way like your parents did. Yeah,
it was just hard to imagine that it wouldn't. You know, and then we had our challenges and trials and dating engagement or whatever, but I don't really remember anyone kind of hand-holding us like through that focus test that you take. I mean, I know one priest who, instead of giving the couples the focus test, he gives them the annulment paperwork when they're engaged, all 100+ questions. And he's like, we're doing this now, not later. And he makes a deep dive into all those questions as part of marriage preparation. And, you know, not only did we not get that, the focus test that we did do, I'm like, oh, okay, there's some red flags, but we'll figure it out, and kind of just went head steam, jumped in.
It was hard because the fact he didn't know, I don't know, he never saw fighting. I felt like I was walking into this Leave It to Beaver like episode he wanted to live forever. And that was not my life. You know, I came from a really rough background, and in all honesty, and this sounds crazy, but I never saw a woman submit to a man in a good, godly, holy way growing up. And none of my family members, like, I didn't see it at all. It was like something you just don't do. Right. So it was, I didn't realize how broken I was going into marriage. I knew I had some healing, especially from things that happened while I was in high school and the party and before my conversion, just things that I did and I dabbled with or got into. So when we got married, all of my brokenness and my old life and everything, I really went into marriage, Matt, thinking, I'm leaving all this crap outside the church, and I'm starting this new fairy tale with Jason. And a part of me, honestly, which maybe it sounds bad to some people, but this is where I was at. Like, I didn't feel worthy to have such a good guy because of everything I had been through and experienced. And I was so bad, and I had this conversion, and God can make all things new, right? But at the same time, I also felt like this, am I gonna be really good enough? Is it gonna like work out the way? Like, there were a lot of fears too because of my brokenness, but I just didn't feel worthy of such a good guy, right?
And did you trust that he was as good as you had believed him to be? Or did you think at some point old guys end up being the way I experienced them maybe when I was younger?
I just had a distorted view of how men were because I was so hurt by them, right? And so, but God really healed a lot in me before marriage, but I really thought, okay, I'm just starting over. You're leaving all this crap outside the suit that stays out, and you walk down into this like new life and fairy tale that I thought our marriage was going to be. And I didn't realize I was just like this handicap walking down the aisle of going into marriage, honestly. And that's hard to say, you know, but at the same time, it was the truth. but God can restore and God can heal. And there's a reason God brought Jason into my life, and God taught and keeps teaching him things through our marriage and through my woundedness and through his own woundedness, even now today, right? But God can do great things, but it's a misconception that you're going to go and you make these like vows, almost like, well, I'm not going to be like my mom. I'm not going to be like my family. I'm going to do things different, right? A lot of us say that and go into marriage. But, well, excuse me, Crystalina, but what makes you think that? Because all you have is a box of broken tools you were handed. So how are you going to do things differently? And I realized that years later, but I was operating out of a toolbox of just broken tools that I was handed to me. So yes, I wanted to do things different, but wanting and doing and being capable of that are very different things. So
how long did that idea that this is my baggage is out there, we've got this princess kind of marriage, how long did that last until you realized, oh no?
Oh, no.
Basically, as soon as we got back from Bora Bora, I think.
We were there for 2 weeks. We had the most unbelievable. We were so blessed on our honeymoon. I'm serious. It was like, this is happening. It was amazing. It was really just this like awesome fairy tale honeymoon. We're going to go back there in 25.
Tell me about this
25
place.
Years.
I want to go there.
Sounds great.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, like we were so spoiled because God knew that like we were going to our Gethsemane when we were getting home. I mean, he really blessed us and brought us.
We had an overwater bungalow, where basically the floor of the room is glass, and you get to see the turquoise waters and the sharks swimming underneath the bungalow, and you wake up to this just breathtaking, island Motu over this turquoise. I mean, it was just everything the postcards are and more, but as she said it, she was raised where I never saw my parents fight, and she never saw her parents get along. And it was almost like this perfect storm that was coming together. The same, I don't know if it's Chesterton or who said that. What marriage is at its core is a mutual misunderstanding. We're going into this, this idea of what it is, and then, but God has a funny way of healing us all through our afflictions, and it's a weird thing that a loving father could allow his children to be afflicted in a particular way. So like, her wounds are drawing out needed healing inside of me, and vice versa. My own wounds are helping to heal her in a different way. So
my wife has this line she often says, I think our wounds are rubbing up against each other. So like my defenses come out and they go up against her defenses and it's not good.
Yeah. And so fight, flight, freeze. I mean, we're discovering all the different mechanisms that we've adopted over the years.
I mean, y'all were quite popular, successful in your apostolate, right? In the sense that you're reaching how many people a year at that time were you speaking to?
More than 100,000 kids a year in person.
You're writing books on chastity, you're writing books on love. So I'd love to know, because we all have little fights and little struggles. I remember for me, I had a groomsman stay in our apartment while we went on our honeymoon. And he just stayed a day or two before leaving back to Canada, but he had left food around the house without cleaning up. So we get back from our honeymoon into this apartment, and there's like mold in bowls, and it was disgusting. And I was like, "Well, hey, I'm gonna go have a nap." So I went to the bed and had a nap, and woke up to my wife like vacuuming into my bed. Let's go back to the honeymoon. This isn't good at all.
Like, what is happening?
So we all experienced that. But I suppose for y'all, what was it like when you hit turbulence, I suppose, in your marriage? When did that happen? And what was it like perhaps with the extra pressure of being these awesome Catholic chastity speakers?
Well, it hit pretty soon.
And I was pregnant, 3-4 weeks into marriage. It was super fast. And
it was a tough pregnancy, too.
It was really bad, yeah.
And then when our son was born, he had all kinds of health complications, allergic even to Crystal's breast milk. And we had to sew gloves onto his pajamas because he'd scratch himself bloody because of the pain of the itchiness and the eczema. And we were in and out of these different hospitals and doctors and specialists. And almost the only way he could fall asleep was while driving in a car with the cool windows down and everything. And then he'd finally get to sleep, and I'd just carefully bring him inside and set him down. He'd sleep for 2 or 3 hours, wake up, feed, get upset, and I'd have to drive him around the neighborhood, 2-3 times a night to try to get him back to sleep. So sleep deprivation, is a form of human torture. When you add that into a marriage and then you try to communicate through all that. But it was a challenge, just a few weeks, I would say, into the marriage, when we start having disagreements and realize okay, as a single, you got a roommate, maybe, somebody you surf with, and it's like you get along 99.99% unless he like uses all like the grilled chicken in the fridge and he didn't buy some more for you or whatever. Like your selfishness isn't tested that much. And then all of a sudden it's put on the stand, and all the virtues that you thought you had prior to marriage, your faults come to the surface like oil and water, because God is doing what he wants the sacrament to do, which is heal and purify the both of you in a painful way. I mean, it's like putting hydrogen peroxide on a wound. It starts fizzing pretty good.
I think you're the best wife and husband until you actually become one. Like in your mind, you're the best, like you're going to be this. And then you actually become one and you're just humbled, like unbelievably, just like in parenthood and you become a mother. And it's just like, oh, I remember my sister told me, I'm going to be such a better mother than you. But not in a bad way, and laughing and like, you're such a mess, but like poking at me. But at the same time, I was like, just you wait. And then once she became a mother, she's like, oh my gosh, I get it. Right. And I think it was the same thing in marriage, but also I honestly didn't think I was going to be able to have children. I had to go to Dr. Hilder's. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And he had to do a surgery on me because my endometriosis was so severe and so bad and painful, like debilitating.
It's the same as my wife. Did you know that?
It was brutal. Yeah. And so Jason knew about, I knew nothing about it and all of that. And they wanted to just put me on birth control, and like birth control for everything, And
not Hilger's.
Not Hilger's. No, the four doctors we saw before.
Yeah, before. I mean, every doctor, because it was like so painful and it was really hurting just my way of life. And everything was birth control, but I had been on birth control prior because in high school and my crazy life, I knew what it was going to do to me. And I wouldn't go back to that poison, right? And so we went to Dr. Hilder's, and thank God, because every time someone wants to put you on birth control, it's almost like they're putting a Band-Aid on this massive gaping wound, and they just keep like, pop that pill, and it's just getting bigger and bigger. And thank God I did go to Dr. Hilder's, and I didn't take the birth control, that little Band-Aid, because I had 2 benign tumors the size of golf balls growing on my ovaries. And I wouldn't have been able to have kids. They just would have kept growing and growing and growing. I probably would have had to have a hysterectomy. So if I would have listened to those doctors, and I took their poison to like correct, it wasn't even going to correct it. It's just this Band-Aid down the road. I would have had massive problems. So God really protected me. And I feel like they kept telling me, we don't know if you're going to be able to have kids because it was so bad. But
this is when we were engaged.
Mm-hmm. And Dr. Hilder's just opened the well springs of life in me, because after John Paul, which I didn't expect. So I go into marriage with this mindset, Matt, thinking, oh, it's not going to be for a year. We might even have a hard time to, boom, you just became a wife. And now, bam, you're a mom. And it really kind of set me back. And it's not that I wasn't happy when I found out we were pregnant, but I was, I think, terrified. I didn't expect, I was already just like, wow, I'm a wife now and everything's changed and getting used to this, right? And then all of a sudden, boom, I'm a mom. It just was a lot. Like I felt this like 1-2 punch and a little taken out. So I feel like in our marriage, especially in the very beginning, I just didn't get to settle into being a wife and being in our groove because I was so sick. So it's like, okay, 3 weeks, 4 weeks into marriage, I just started not feeling right. And just like, it took a toll on me. And so that was like our first like year of marriage. So I think a part of me even was a little resentful. Like, why couldn't I be a wife?
Oh,
like, why
beautiful.
Couldn't I?
It's beautiful because it's honest. I know that, as Catholics...
Not that I don't love my son. I don't want to be here to see that.
Point.
Yeah, that's the thing.
As Catholics, we feel the need, right, to not just condemn abortion, but to speak about the beauty of life and the importance of having many children. And so I know there's a lot of parents who might feel kind of shame when they get pregnant real quick.
Yes.
And they don't know what to do with that emotion. They think, is something wrong with me that I'm not thrilled about this? And I think the answer is no, but I'd love to explore that.
Yeah, I mean, some people say to me, well, we don't want to have kids for the first 2 or 3 years because we really want to get to know each other. And, I kind of say, well, have kids, you'll get to know each other real good. Like the good, the bad, the ugly. But yeah, I think there's a lot of false shame, of thinking like, okay, why is marriage so hard on me? Why is parenthood so hard? I must be the deficient one because, I look and everybody else has these blissful, perfect marriages and it's just not reality. And that's why I thought it'd be just good coming on this show. Not that we're all healed and we have everything figured out, but that we can speak from our wounds and from the things that we've done to help encourage people beforehand to kind of take care of the stuff that you need to take care of before you get into marriage and think, instead of thinking that marriage is a car wash, that like this is a magical ring and you put it on and like you're Frodo and you could just do all this brand new stuff. And like, yeah, there are objective graces that come with the sacrament of marriage that you can tap into. But in terms of the wounds, the trauma, the deficiencies in our own virtues, it's like, no, the more you can dedicate yourself to your healing process prior to the marriage, the better that you can make a gift of yourself to your spouse in marriage. So.
I remember a woman calling me, very solid, beautiful Catholic woman, and she was just honest with my wife and I and said, I'm more sympathetic to women who have an abortion. Not because she didn't realize that was an abominable, heinous thing to do, but because she can now get in the mindset of a woman who's like, oh, this could just be taken care of really quickly. Because she had all these plans she wanted to accomplish. And of course she didn't do that. But I do think there's something really beautiful about kind of allowing yourself to be honest with where you are. Because God doesn't love who we think we should be but aren't. Because who we think we should be but aren't doesn't exist. Yeah. Grace builds upon nature, and that pertains to us individually, so we can just be who we are, but also our marriages. And when we think our marriage should look a certain way and we pretend that it's a certain way, well, that's an illusion. It's nothing, so God can't work with that. I once heard someone say to me, don't ever compare your inside to someone else's outside.
Very good.
And that's excellent advice for the individual, but certainly for marriage. Yeah.
No, that's huge. And I felt like I had to fit in that box. That was it. I went in with this mindset like, okay, well, now I have to do this and I have to do this and I have to dress this way and I have to like fit into this Catholic mold because frankly, I went in so handicapped. I was trying to be something or fill those gaps or those wounds or like the things that I lacked. I thought there was a certain like almost this persona and that like Kimberly Hahn kind of, right? And God bless her. She's amazing. She's helped so many women, but that's what I longed for and I really wanted. But no one ever taught me that. Nobody ever taught me. I mean, my mom was building empires and companies, and I was raised by a nanny a lot of the time, you know, and she was a single mom. And my father left when I was 2, and that was a mess, but I didn't grow up with a man around, but I grew up with a very self-sufficient, confident, business-like mindset woman mother, and she took very good care of. She did her best that she could. She handed down the faith to us. But at the same time, it was just like, okay, well, I learned at a very young age, don't trust men. You have to be self-sufficient and you have to learn the stock market. You have to like just be very like competent and be able to take care of yourself because eventually he's going to leave you. So just be ready for that. Yeah. And I always in my mind always had plan B because that's all I saw. So what else was I going to kind of project in the marriage? But when I got to marriage and I really learned my Catholic faith and like wanted to be that stay-at-home mom. I wanted those things, but you just don't, like, it doesn't just turn on. You think something's going to turn on when you get married or when you become a mom, and their graces are there, but I didn't realize how incredibly broken I was and what I brought into marriage, which was really unfair for Jason. And if I actually knew, because I didn't find out till years later of counseling, like I had to go to counseling, and I found out that I was sexually abused when I was little, and I suppressed that, and it came out because I was struggling so much in marriage and I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know why I was always so angry and I was just like, oh, all the time. But on the outside to everyone, I had it together. I had that Instagram perfect thing going on, right? But man, I shut the door and I'd be a mess. But my message was still relevant. I didn't lie because it's never too late to start over. I had this huge conversion and that was my mission when I first started speaking about chastity, just screaming to the rooftops to young women, like, it doesn't matter who you are, where you've been, what you've done. All that matters is where you go from here. Like, God can restore you, can start over. You are worthy of love, right? No matter what's happened to you. But at the same time, this was like a whole new, like, journey God was taking me on of like, okay, let's really get into this. And it was ugly. And it was scary and it was overwhelming. And here I have a husband and I have kids and I just felt so broken. And I would go to adoration and I felt Jesus kept telling me, well, do you need counseling? And I literally looked directly at the Eucharist and say, no. And I'd walk out of adoration like I was not having it. I just was not having it, right? And deep down, we all know what we're supposed to do, you know? It's about the obedience of following through and doing that. And I wasn't having it because I grew up with everyone telling me, you don't talk to people. You don't go pay someone because you're crazy and you have these problems. I mean, you must really have issues if you're going to pay someone to listen to your crap. You know, I mean, it was harsh. But I realize now after my healing, well, they want to keep things secret. they didn't want you talking to anyone, right? They wanted to fear you into that. And so I believed them. But once I did go to counseling and all of this kind of came up, that I was sexually abused when I was a little girl, I made so much sense to myself, though, right? Why I did certain things, why I loved a certain way, why I had a hard time with certain things within marriage. And I made so much sense in that moment to myself, which was a relief, like, that's why, finally, you know? But then at the same time, the ground fell beneath me. And then we went into a deeper, like, dive of just, like, our own Gethsemane in marriage of when I was going through that. It was really difficult and really hard, and we didn't expect it, but it made sense, right?
Thank you for sharing that. So what was it like when you realized, oh, we're not just dealing with things that married couples dealing with, there's maybe more here?
Yeah. No, I at first you're looking at the fruits of the arguments, of the distance, of the difficulty to build connection and consistent intimacy on an emotional, spiritual, physical level. But I remember Dr. Bob Schutz has this great kind of image that typically there's a wound, and that's kind of the root system of everything. And if that wound isn't really treated and it's kind of swept over, you know, lies will grow out of that particular wound of, like, you're not wanted, you're not safe, you can't trust men, you're not enough. You know, those types of, you know, lies will grow out of that. And when those lies reach maturity, they bear fruit. Whether it's during her high school years of her party lifestyle or just the distance within the marriage, you see all of this fruit, and it gets all the attention. And so you're sitting here trying to snip off the fruit, and then you wait a week, and then it just sprouts right back. It's because that's gaining nourishment from the lies that are rooted in the wounds that aren't being treated. And so whether it's pornography addiction or, you know, whatever type of fruit that gets all the attention, or self-harm or this or that, everybody focuses on the fruit, but we've really got to get down to that and disturb the root system of, like, okay, what was going on? What lies have you believed out of those wounded places? And so, you know, she was, you know, operating out of that hurt without realizing it. And then as a husband, you know, I don't think anyone, especially in marriage prep, I mean, God bless. I mean, I've done marriage prep classes for couples, and that's not really marriage. I mean, that's triage is a better name for what's going on there, of just like, okay, we got 10 weeks, let's get the house in order. And they're literally spending more time on their wedding preparing than on the marriage. That, like, you can statistically look at the hours, and it's far more going into wedding prep than marriage prep. But I don't think what I was prepared for is that in every vocation, there's going to be an aloneness in your vocation. And a lot of times, you know, people think, well, that's priesthood, that's celibacy, and you're going to have to sort that out. But there's a particular aloneness that's unique to the sacrament of marriage. I heard a priest once say that the only path to holiness is through aloneness, not loneliness of total isolation, but aloneness of you and Christ. That you might, because of all the sacraments, we can only worship one. You know, we can worship the Blessed Sacrament, and that's it. The other 6 are not up for worship. And a lot of times we begin to idolize marriage and to think that is just going to be such a fulfillment of all my desires. And in some ways it is, you know, a partial fulfillment, but only God deserves the crown. And if you put that crown of the piece of your heart and everything onto another person, the weight of that will crush them. And so what will end up happening is you enter into this period of disillusionment and aloneness. But Christ is inviting us, in a sense, into the desert. Because if we don't go into the desert, Christ will draw us out there. The Holy Spirit will send us into this desert to meet him. And you know, so for the darkest times in our marriage of just feeling so alone, where I would go especially to the Psalms, and I would read the Psalms of desolation, and eventually you could start just breathing them, because the Psalms are the prayer about Christ, you know, of Christ and by Christ. So he inspired them, he prayed them, and they're about his passion, death, and resurrection. So what I would do is I would find a Psalm of desolation, and it's about a third of them, and I would pray it once, just from me to the Father, and then I would pray it a second time, imagining Christ pray it to the Father during his passion, whether it's the garden or on the cross, and then I would pray a third time with Christ to the Father. And in doing so, I discovered that in the darkest times of suffering in our marriage, it pivoted my question from God, like, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far away from me? It changed the question to Christ, like, why have you come so close to me in this suffering? Like, why have you come so close to me that I can breathe the Psalms? And so I discovered that in this suffering, in the aloneness that I was going through, in this time of isolation from her and all the woundedness, Christ was drawing me back to himself in a way that I hadn't been without that suffering.
my wife and I, this doesn't happen as much now, but I would say it did 10 years ago and before that. We might get into an argument because she's done something, objectively wrong that she needs to apologize for, but she's being too prideful, and I lose it. And then when I lose it, it becomes all about how I lost it. And fair enough, because me losing is actually worse than what she did. And consequently, I remember saying to her, I feel like we're never getting around to your stuff. So my question for you is, was that a temptation not to look at whatever stuff you had under the hood because hers was so much louder, if I'm understanding that correctly?
No, it's true. Yes.
No, it's false. I was perfect.
Okay.
So our marriage isn't perfect because she's not perfect. Because if she was,
everything would
just be bliss.
You see what I'm dealing with on a daily basis?
Yeah, but I think it's a good question.
No, for sure, because hers was so loud, symbolically and literally. And so it's just with my selfishness, with my, my pride, my ego, my lack of forgiveness, my lack of patience, that stuff was getting covered over just because of, her little explosions here and there. It'd just be like, that's the problem. And the ways that I might be triggering those things or deflecting blame. Yeah, I mean, hers was so loud. My stuff was kind of like, you're telling me this is the problem? No, you're the problem.
And it's not to say that a spouse can't be the primary problem within a marriage. I'm not saying you were, but I'm just saying in any marriage, of course that can be a reality, but it can also just sort of, our eyes are on you the whole time and we don't even begin to see. And consequently, I wonder what it's like when the spouse who's maybe more of a problem starts to go to healing and maybe it's only well down the line in your marriage that the other person starts to realize what they've been justifying and how they need to grow. Yeah,
because it started with you need to go to counseling. Before we were married, you need to work on this stuff. And she accepted the point that there's some junk that I haven't processed and just a little bit prior to marriage. And then in marriage, I was able to dive more deeply into it, but it was still predominantly her. And then, I would come as invited, to sit down and work. And we've been very outspoken throughout our ministry, hey, we go to marriage counseling. When we hit tough patches, we go, there's no shame in saying, we're the theology body people, we're the how to find your soulmate couple, and we're going to marriage counseling because we're hitting these patches and we're not knowing how to get through this stuff. But it only has been more recently where it's okay, I need to go without us, without her, and I need to start processing stuff of, how I handle trauma and things that I've been through. Because I did have kind of a Leave It to Beaver upbringing. My parents got along really well. I don't have any significant trauma back then. And it was almost like a too good to be true kind of upbringing. And so I just wasn't seasoned in a certain way for the crosses that would come within marriage. But only recently have I started to dive into my own counseling process. And I don't like it at all.
I want to say a big thanks to the College of St. Joseph the Worker based in Steubenville, Ohio. You'll recognize many of their faculty and fellows from the show, people like Dr. Andrew Jones, Dr. Jacob Imam, Dr. Mark Barnes, Dr. Alex Plato. Listen to this. Their program combines the rigor of an elite bachelor's degree with the practicality of training in the skilled trades. And their tuition model is structured so that students graduate without crippling debt. If you're a bright young man thinking about what college to go to, apply to a place where you not only learn the good, but gain the power to do it. Apply to the College of St. Joseph the Worker. If you're a parent, look into this college for your children. And if you're not in either category, just consider supporting the mission. Go to collegeofstjoseph.com/Matt Fradd to learn more. That's collegeofstjoseph.com/Matt Fradd to learn more. There will be a link below. Thanks.
I was talking to him the other day and he's like, well, how's this going for you? I'm like, I don't like it.
How about you shut up?
Yeah. I'm like, can I go do something? I could get so many emails done in this time that we're sitting. And I just started to realize my own addiction to productivity and how I run to doing, because I just don't want to be. And even in prayer, I think when we are getting started in the interior life, the devil's tactic is to distract us from prayer. Oh, you're too busy, got a lot of other stuff to do. And if he doesn't succeed in that, he tries to distract us during prayer. Look, there's a squirrel and there's other things that and we're just and then we kind of plow through that. And then the final stage of distraction I think he gives us is to distract us with prayer in the sense that, okay, I'm going to do my rosary. I'm going to do my office. I'm going to do my Bible. I'm do, and I'm done. I did my prayer. I got my holy hour. I did my thing and I'm out. And God's like, well, I want to tell you, I'll get you next time. There's no room for quiet. There's no room for receptivity. There's no time for just being loved by the Father, because I just got to do my stuff. And so I've started to grow to realize how much my own addiction to productivity has infected my interior life.
Did you feel like this is a question for both of you, but since you just answered, did you feel like a hypocrite? Getting up on stages, people recognizing you as these beautiful Catholic people? Or as you say from the beginning, we're like, no, never, because I was always very open about how we were going to therapy or whatever. Because I think everyone very comfortably says, hey, I'm a sinner, with maybe too much comfort, because no one's like, hey, I like to masturbate sometimes. Nobody does that, you know? And so I think like generically, yeah, we struggle sometimes in our marriage.
Yeah.
That sounds way better than I did this thing that's so shameful that I don't even know how to forgive myself. Yeah. So did you feel like a hypocrite? And then how did you?
I didn't feel a sense of duplicity because I felt like, no, like we picked for the Bible, the gospel reading of our wedding mass, the crucifixion. From the
Don't
Gospel
do
of
that.
John.
Don't do it.
It's just like
That is
asking
such,
for
that is
it.
such the choice of someone who went through Steubenville University in the 90s.
No,
I
we
was
did.
mad at him at one point, like, why did you set our
he's like,
foundation
everybody
at
does
Calvary?
Everybody does the wedding feast. You know, we got to shake it up a little bit. And we did that one, and then we did the book of Tobit as well, of the healing with Raphael the Archangel. And it's like, there were prophetic things taking place that we didn't even realize. We're like, oh, this would be nice, and I like that passage. And God's like, okay, I'm writing a poem for you guys without you guys even knowing it. But no, I can't say that I ever felt a sense of duplicity, because I knew I wasn't going home and looking at pornography and getting drunk and gambling and all this stuff. I was living out, like she said, kind of our own Gethsemane. And it was very mysterious to me.
Well, how about not hypocrisy? Because fair enough, right? Hypocrisy isn't failing to live up to your own standards. It's demanding that everybody else live up to a standard that you don't think applies to you, in a sense, right? So that's fair. Yep. Okay, but what about, did you feel a kind of awkwardness when people would run up to you and look at you as if you guys have a perfect marriage without any problems? What was that like? Because I know for me, like sometimes I'll get into an argument with my wife, or I'll do something that's kind of crummy right before I got to get up and sound kind of Christian-y, and I think, ugh. And then I realize, okay, glory to Jesus Christ, like I'm your broken instrument, and any good that happens is because of you, and acknowledging that, but it can still be awkward.
We never put ourselves on a pedestal. We were put there, right? Yeah. And that's the first thing. And second thing, I've always been very open about my brokenness, my wounds, my shortcomings, and that I didn't have the perfect background, and I don't have the perfect marriage, and it's hard and it's difficult. But I think the difference between just like, I think saints and people that are like striving for that holiness is that we keep showing up to our fight. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud of where we've come from, the things we've gone through. I mean, the depths of the darkness that we have had to face in our marriage. And yet we're still here, and God is with us, and his light and his beauty and his grace has abounded, all of that. But man, was there a time of stripping and just like questioning and just like anger and just frustration and resentment and all of the things. But at the same time, I'm not less than, or my marriage isn't less than, because I'm still fighting. I'm still striving for that grace, that holiness that God is calling me to in this filth, in this brokenness, in my wounds and our marriage wounds. It's like we never are giving up the fight. And I think that's something to be proud of. That is something to proclaim. Like, I don't care how hard it gets. I don't care how deep the darkness is. I don't care what's going on. Jesus is there. If you see it, you feel it, maybe you're losing your faith, he's still going to stick with you. And isn't that what we all want anyway? We want that person that sees your ugly, sees your wounds, sees your brokenness, and he's all in. He's like, I'm not going anywhere. I love you. I'm here, and I'll go to bat, and there's nothing that's going to separate me from you except you yourself in our own sin, right? But like, Jesus is there. He's present. And even if we're giving up, he doesn't give up on us. And I've experienced that where I'm like, get away from me. Like, I don't want you, like, Peter, don't look at me. Like it hurts me too much to see, like, have you look at me almost, right?
100% understand that.
But then in that's actually where we were talking about this in my book group. I have this amazing book group I go to at my church, and these amazing women that had just helped me in my darkest of times, even in our marriage. And we were actually just talking about, Matt, about like, what does it mean to be Jesus' beloved? Like when he says, you are my beloved, because it's just like, oh, okay. Like it's hard to like take that in because you don't feel like a beloved, what does that even look like? But I really contemplated on that. And I think it shocked them when I said, I actually felt for the first time in my life, Jesus beloved, where I said I could actually experience and like really feel that, right? Is when he was tending to my wounds and I was so broken. I actually felt him there. And like, he was actually just loving me. I felt so immersed in his love, I think, because I was in so much darkness and in so much pain, and there was so much happening that only he could go to that place. But actually in that darkest, most shameful time in my life, that's when I felt like his beloved, right? But I was so weak and broken, and to be able to admit that. But I don't care how bad your marriage gets. I don't care what things have happened. Nothing can separate you from God just always pursuing you in that. And the grace is there, but you have to want it. Because I think a lot of the times we're so mad at ourselves and we hate ourselves because of certain things that we've done. And we know we've done them, but we're guilty. So we want to just push it away and get prideful and, like, and not feel it. But at the same time, that's also when you could push Jesus away and you kind of are just like, just get away. Because I've had that in my life, you know, and it's been hard. But at the same time, I think that's when my relationship has exponentially grown because of those times. And I just surrendered it. Because at some point you're fighting, and then you have to surrender because you're screwing it all up, right? When you think you're not.
I think what's difficult is if I had that experience of consolation and Christ's nearness in the depths of despair, it would make it bearable. And maybe I can look back and see that Christ was there. But I think what's so disheartening for many of us is when the struggles of daily life just seem so...
Death by a thousand cuts,
well,
like little things.
They seem meaningless. And things just seem chaotic and there's no good to this. We read the stories of the saints and we can go, okay, I can see how that was a cross. No. But what I'm dealing with, I don't feel our Lord anywhere. It's been a long time. He's either forgotten about me, he doesn't love me, maybe he doesn't exist. But this stuff I'm dealing with, it's meaningless. If I could sense the meaning or how I'm growing in it, then I could go Jesus.
Yeah, no, but I mean, half of the weight of the cross is the mystery of it. And we want to be able to understand the cross. And that would remove half the weight. Because just if God came to us in perfect clarity and said, I'm going to ask you to do this, and by you offering this up, it's going to save 10,000 souls over here, you'd be like, okay, great. But God puts us in a dark night. He puts us in a fog for a particular reason. Because, I mean, you can complete a journey of 1,000 miles in a total fog as long as you're just taking one step at a time. And, you know, his word says, my word is a lamp to your feet, a light to your path. A lamp doesn't give you squat in terms of light, like a foot, 2 feet. But the God deliberately says, I'm not giving you a spotlight, I'll give you a lamp, because you just have to stay on the path and just walk and I'll take you there. And I think he wants us to enter into that Calvary of a state of total isolation from every human consolation, even divine consolation. And we've got to almost spiritually marinate in that darkness for him to accomplish the healing that he wants us to. So it's not a matter of like, I know I'm suffering, but I feel Christ's profound intimacy at this very moment, so it's easy. It's like, no, it's when he withdraws the sensibility of his presence from us that he's actually closest to us. But we can't feel that in the time being. And so, I mean, for the times that we weren't getting along, I mean, the challenge was that she was coming from a place, I think, where conflict was something very comfortable for her. It's almost all that she had known with her parents and her extended relatives.
Did you realize it was comfortable at the time? You're like, I don't want this. Yeah.
Who knows when you don't realize when you're operating out of a wound, because that's what you're operating out of. That's like where you're living. That's where you're that's where you're like grounded in.
A sense of control in that. And I was the total opposite.
Yeah.
That, like, for me, conflict is not a safe place to be. And so when these two storms would kind of collide, you know, we're both operating out of a particular wound, thinking the other one, she thinking, okay, he's conflict avoidant, he's not wanting to resolve this stuff. Me thinking this is overbearing, this is too much. You know, there were times where we're just like, we can't be in the same room, you know, tonight. And then it became another night and another night. And before you know it, it's weeks and it's months living in a different room in the same house, of not knowing how to go forward on this and how to heal and what brokenness in us that needs to be resolved for us to connect. Both of us on a deep level wanting that closeness and safety and intimacy with each other, but both of us doubting the goodness of the other person's heart and living out of that suspicion. But
suspicion, that's the key word, I think. Yeah, because then even when you try to reconcile, your best attempt may as well also be an insult. It's like, I can't do anything.
Yeah.
If I actually make a step forward, it's received.
I resent the way you're breathing, that kind of thing.
When the evil one attacks you from the outside, right? And spiritual warfare, and there's things happening, and you know, like, okay, we're really undergoing spiritual warfare, and it's on the outside. But if he can turn that and twist it to where, okay, let me just make and slowly seep in the cracks, slowly seep in the wounds and expand them, right? And actually, we start destroying ourselves and each other and making his job easy. It's like you don't necessarily say, oh, this is spiritual warfare. You're just seeing like, wow, he's being really selfish. Wow, he's like over excessive in this hobby. Or he's like, and it starts like manifesting more and more, and you start listening to that demonic dialogue, just like he doesn't care, he cares more about this than me, and da-da-da-da, and you start hearing, and I don't think people realize how much they are taking in and believing and taking on the demonic dialogue that's being whispered to them on a daily. And just like, he doesn't care. He doesn't like, he loves this ministry more than your family. And he's always gone and this, and he can minister to those people. He can't even be here for me and blah, 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 like whipping him like just the left and right. And
But if there's a demon on your shoulder saying those exact words,
like, see,
you'd
look
understand.
What he's doing.
Yeah.
Da, 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 da,
but when it's your own thoughts or
and then
what you think are your own thoughts.
And we believe it. Like we're so open to believe the negative, even about ourselves. Like you're stupid, you're fat, you're ugly, you're not worthy, you're going to make a fool of you. Like, you
even
know what I mean?
on the way to this trip.
On the way to the trip. And it's just like...
What do you mean by that? On
Jesus,
the way to the trip?
tell me the truth. Like coming here, I was like so kind of like triggered and just like, we shouldn't be doing this. We shouldn't be getting up. And we shouldn't be telling people and da-da-da. And just not that I want to hide, but I've gone through so much and I'm so protective and just protecting myself and protecting just certain things in my past and certain things that have happened to me. And I don't know, a lot of fear came up, but I was reading scripture and I was praying and it was so beautiful because I read something that said like, fear is the seed of evil. And I was like, whoa, like, you know, because a lot of the times I have been so fearful in my life and I've had to overcome it that it really is a paralyzing thing and it stops you from doing a lot of good because Jesus says so many times, like, do not fear. And that's been a thing, like Pope John Paul II, like we know him for saying, do not fear, because I think fear keeps us from loving, from being open, from being vulnerable, from trusting, even within your marriage in certain aspects in your life, right?
And even as you're speaking, I kind of have an image in my mind of like the rays of divine mercy came through an open wound. And we have this idea that our wound needs to be shut, cauterized, healed,
so we can receive the
gone,
divine mercy.
and then we can go do. When in reality, like God wants to be able to work through us in our own state of woundedness, as long as we're on the road, you know, and following his will. Let it. So, you know, coming here is like, do we really have our stuff together? Have we ironed out? No. We're still figuring it out. We're total rook. I mean, someone asked me a while ago, like, what was the hardest time of marriage? And I said, just the first 23 years. And he said, how long have you been married? I said, 23 years. You know, but it's not a despair. It's just like, okay, you know, there's a lot of work that God apparently still wants to do in us. But this idea that God can't use you until you're totally over that thing. I mean, who's St. Mark Ji Cheng Zhang, I mean, died addicted to opium, canonized saint in the Catholic Church. And so God can still use us in our brokenness and almost prefers to.
What was it like, because you said that you would spend sometimes months apart in different rooms. What was it like your children seeing all this? Because I often think, can we just go figure this out? And then, you know, I don't want my mess to get in the way of the children. I remember there reminds me of a bishop who, during the sex abuse scandal, said something very wise to the priests. He said, we can sometimes be tempted to think that, you know, counseling those who've been afflicted by this or what have you gets in the way of our ministry. But we have to realize, no, this is our ministry. And I think likewise, it would be awesome if a married couple could figure things out and then have children and then not have to wound them and not have them to have to see the venom that we sometimes intentionally throw at each other and spit at each other.
No, that was one of the most heartbreaking things of the isolation, is knowing that the kids are witnessing this dysfunction and then seeing their parents on stage, you know, and doing this talk and coming out with that product. And at home, it's just so hard. I was talking to a guy I know who's in the special ops in the military, and he was just doing a talk, and I was listening to him in person at this thing, and he was explaining, you know, when the U.S. military wants a swift and overwhelming victory, it's always the same strategy. We take out command and control, then we cut lines of communication, and then we isolate and eliminate the units. And he just went on in his talk. I pulled him aside and said, say it again. And one thing, I said, that three thing, I need to hear that again. And he said, you take out command and control, you cut the lines of communication, and then you isolate and eliminate the units. And it was just like, that's happening. the evil one is trying to take out command and control, heads of the family, and then he's cutting the lines of communication, not only between us, but between the kids, so that he can isolate and eliminate the units, each member of the domestic church. And it was just a eye-opening of like, this is under a deliberate attack. And
Satan has desired to sift you like wheat.
And I was...
Subtle. No, go ahead. It's subtle. It's scary how subtle, because we know better. It's a subtle thing. We know better. And it's just like, okay, we're doing all of these things, but yet here we are struggling. And when I know Jason has said this many times, that when you're not married, the devil will do everything in his power to get you as close as physically possible to like crossing over, right? But when you're married, he will do everything in his power, Matt, to get you as far as possible from each other, because your bond as a couple and your marital bond, your sexual bond, like that almost soul tie, is powerful against him. And when you're one like that and you're on your altar of your marriage bed, and if he can remove you from that, he can distort that and keep you from that. I mean, he's got one up on you right there.
I remember hearing a priest say that, when a husband and wife are united as they should be, that their bond is so profoundly an imitation of the inner life of the Blessed Trinity that the devil cannot stand it. He can't come near it. And so he isolates them so that he can act. And so I've even heard some priests talk about the marital union as a minor exorcism, that the devil can't be anywhere around it. When it's being shared in a way that's in alignment with God's plan for human sexuality, it's a renewal of the vows. You're speaking the vows in your body instead of with your words. And like Crystal said, this is not a bed. This is an altar. That's why the book of Hebrews keep the marriage bed undefiled. It's a place set apart. So the division was happening emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically, geographically, in terms of the spaces in the house. Just trying to fight, because if the devil can kind of split that atom of the husband and the wife, then everything is going to crumble beneath it. And that's why they always say the best thing you do for your kids is just love your wife. And it was just like, I want to love my kids so badly, but then our relationship is so broken, so dysfunctional, so it's so painful. It was a tremendous cross to know that they were witnessing this, and just asking God, where are you in the midst of this? Like, how can this be your will, to have my children in tears because the dysfunction of their parents? Like, where are you in the midst of all of this? And literally crying out to him and hearing nothing. Like you talk to priests, well, what's God saying to you? Nothing. He's saying nothing. I feel like I'm throwing a coin into a well and I don't even hear it land at the bottom. It just goes. And so these prayers are just like echoed into eternity, and nothing comes back to me. And so you're in that dark spot of just crying out to God, not for a couple prayer sessions, but for like years of just feeling like you're in this desert. But there's years that ask questions, and there's years that answer. And
Did your marriage get bad and then worse and then kept getting, or was there pockets of reconciliation and hope only to go back down again?
Roller coasters.
Sometimes I'm not sure what's worse.
No, and then you think, oh, this is it, and finally there's just going to be this peace, and then there was something else, and then it was constant, and then there were a couple, I don't know, there was a year where everything was like, I felt like all of hell was after our family. All of hell was after Jason and I, to just rip everything apart. And to be honest, I feel like God really does test you. Everyone's going to be tested in their life in one way or another. And I feel like God allowed, there's times where he just allows, and to see how you handle, how faithful, just puts you to the test. And I felt like,
I wish you didn't trust me so much.
But it says in the scripture, he scourges every son he receives.
Oh my gosh, I started resenting and getting mad at God. Why don't you let up? I can't breathe. I'm trying, I'm fighting. You keep knocking me down. And I was just exhausted.
If you could perceive yourself growing in virtue, like we said earlier, and this is true in my own life now, I can think of different things that are going on. If I could perceive the point to this, or if I could see, I'm getting more patient, then maybe I could deal with it. But when it just feels like nothing good is coming of this or will ever come of this, then it just feels meaningless.
And it's like, okay, our kids are having issues. Jason and I are having issues. They thought I had breast cancer. Even my body wasn't functioning right. Everything was falling apart around me, right? And I just kind of stepped back. I stopped doing some ministry. I just stepped back because I'm like, oh no, I need to step back. And I wasn't taking on speaking engagements. I pulled away from just podcasts and just like everything, social media, I kind of was like, I don't care. Like God is like, obviously I need to deal with myself. I need to deal with what's going on, my health, just our marriage, everything. And I'm just like, what is happening? And everything was like this wrecking ball out of nowhere because everything's going so good and like things are flourishing and there's so much fruit and things are happening. But slowly in that, I think there's a disorder that people have to be so careful with of how things are structured, like God, your husband, your kids, and everything else. And slowly, because you're doing so much good and you see the good, you see the fruit, you don't see the cracks in the foundation, the chink in the armor that's getting bigger and bigger. And then you start like things just start crumbling, but there's so much fruit, there's so much good. And then it's just like, but I'm falling apart. That's not like my own temple's crumbling, but yet everything else is being built up. That's disorder, right? And so there's a time of just stepping back and like, okay, I am having massive issues with my husband, but is it my husband or is it me? Because I got to a point where I didn't want to pray for Jason. I was so angry. I was so hurt. I was just like, oh, I'm just fed up. And like the level of the resentment I allowed, that's the thing. I allowed it. The devil only goes so far and he'll go as far as you let him. But those little things that creep in, the unforgiveness, the resentment, the hurt, the anger, the things you want to hold on to, the things you should apologize for that you're like, screw it, he's not sorry, so why should I be? I'm sick of being the one always apologizing. I'm tired of it. Like, I'm over the ego and pride. And I kept telling myself these things when it's like, well, what about your own ego and pride? It's hard, but at the same time, there were real hurts, there were real wounds. And it's like, but I knew at some point, and thank God for the women at the church that just kind of slowly became friends with, because I think I was so isolated as well. Like I was isolated and then you slowly get taken out, right? And I allowed myself to be, but I was so private. Like how could we not be private, because we are public, we are on stage, people have this on your pedestal and you don't want to affect them because God has them on their own journey. But at the same time, we are broken people. We are sinners. All of us are. And, it's very silly to say that, oh, well, we're not having our own struggles. We're not having our own problems. And I have all the answers and we're perfect. It's a bunch of crap. It's like everybody has problems. But I wasn't prepared and I didn't want to be public about it. But these women at my church and Andrea and Kristen and they just like, they were so good. And they just kind of I let them in and I didn't have really good friends that I could trust. But they became these prayer warriors, and just this Ashley who like actually was like a fan of us. Like that was hard. Like, okay, I had to tell her what's going on. And these three women that literally ministered to me and prayed with me. It was so powerful, letting good, holy women in to help me, because I realized I was in a serious spiritual battle and you cannot fight evil one on your own. Like sometimes like you're in battles that you can like overcome on your own, but there are battles where you need troops with you. You need people coming and helping you fight that battle and carrying you when you're wounded sometimes. And that's what those women did for me so beautifully. And they're still there. And I know those women, they go to bat for me any day. And like spiritually, I can call them up and be like, this is happening. And boom, they're there, they're praying. And you need people like that in your life. And it's silly to say like, oh, well, I'm going to get a counselor and I'm going to read this latest book and I'm going to go on Instagram and see, and I'm going to talk to Chat GPT and he's going to help me fix this problem. No, some things are straight up spiritual warfare, and you need to wield the weapons of the church in order to combat with things coming after you. Mm-hmm. And that's what I did. And I got into that mindset, not only for my family, my husband, but also for myself, and realizing, okay, I've got some serious weaknesses and brokenness that I need to overcome as well in all of this mess, right?
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, my wife's advice, we had a couple come up to us in Assisi, and they just happened to be there, and they were engaged, and she said, what advice do you have for us? And she gave some good advice. She said, always, when you get into an argument, you, talking to the woman, always call a woman who will take his side, within reason. And you as a fella, always call someone who's going to take her side. And I think that's good advice. I mean, if I am struggling in my marriage and I go to a fella who speaks ill of my wife. You know, like we're done forever. Goodbye. Have a good life.
Yeah.
So did you have men in your life that you could turn to about this? Or
Not for a long, long time. It was just, I felt like if I was starting to share these things, I'd be betraying her in the sense that this is really what's going on. And, you know, her desire for privacy and, you know, the respect of her own name. I thought if I tell anybody how hard this is, then, you know, it's not going to go, it's going to create more conflict between us because she'll want to know, who did you talk to? What did you say? I'm like, so I'm just going to, I'll deal with it. And so I stuffed it for a good decade and a half, you know, before I really started talking to anybody about it, other than just a confessor, a spiritual director. And then started to find kind of my band of brothers, you know, of guys like Devin and Chris and like Brian Butler in particular, where he would, oh my goodness, you know, he would just leave me voice memos first thing in the morning. Hey, I got Psalm whatever for you today. And he'd just read it there and say a prayer over the voice memo, click, just like day to day to day, just checking in like a brother like I had never really had one before. So I was able to discover, you know, how much more progress you can make when you're not trying to go alone. What do they say? If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go as a team.
do you wish earlier than you did that, do you wish you had have asked Crystalina for, hey, can I, because I get it, right? I mean, you don't want to disclose all of your spouse's dysfunction to someone without their permission. Do you wish that you had have asked her, like, I need to talk to someone about this because I need to process what's going on. Can I talk to Brian? Can I?
Well, I think we had, and she, I don't know that you, I think she might have been okay with me going to like a counselor kind of thing, but not talking to just random guys.
You feel so exposed. I mean, I remember when I was struggling with pornography and my wife's like, I need to talk to someone about this. And I remember being like, yeah, okay, you can talk to this person about it. You know, I trust her, you trust her.
Yeah.
I think that was really helpful for her. Otherwise, she's got to suffer in silence, you know. And meanwhile, I can go, I can tell whoever I want. I'm getting kind of comfort and consolation from good men in my life who are encouraging me and that sort of thing. Meanwhile, she's suffering and no one's asking what she should be doing about it.
And again, I was coming from a place of more conflict avoidance of just like, I don't want to, there's enough rough waters here. I don't want to ruffle more feathers. I don't want to create more conflict. We have more than enough. So I'm just going to, but then as I kind of matured out of that and realized, okay, no, I need to be willing as a man to create conflict when it needs to happen. And so as I stepped into that new place of masculinity, it did create more conflict, but it was a necessary in healing conflict. Because they say that the truth might hurt, but it'll never harm. And so being able to create a healing conflict was something that I didn't know how to do as a young husband, of just like, no, I need to be able to just tell you, no, yeah, this does need to happen. And there's going to be a conflict and we're going to work through it. I didn't have, I think, that level of masculine development going into marriage that I would be willing to create a conflict for greater good. It was, no, the good is no conflict. That's the place, and whatever's going to get me there is the temperament that I need to hold on to. And so it's been a journey for not only me, but for her to see this new part of my own development of being like, no, it's okay, let's have a conflict. Let's go after this and we can resolve it and work through it.
If you are a Catholic and tired of dating apps that feel, well, not very Catholic, there is a better way. It's called Catholic Chemistry. It's a dating site and app for intentional Catholic dating, made for Catholics by Catholics, designed for real intentional Catholic dating. Go to catholicchemistry.com/Matt, and if you love it, use the promo code MATT for 20% off optional upgrades. I think we've talked about this before, and I love that you talked about growing into that masculine part of you, where that awful phrase, happy wife, happy life.
Yeah.
First of all, it treats a woman like a petulant teenager who has to be placated. But I think one of the reasons men often fall into that is they don't want her to withhold sex from them.
Yeah.
And so in a weird way, the man ends up becoming a simp, as the children say today, towards his wife, when he's supposed to be leading the family, and leading the family means telling her what's going to happen that's going to upset her.
Yeah.
And being okay that it's upsetting her. You want to do this in a loving, considerate way, of course. But
no, what I realized is I was actually using her by avoiding conflict with her. That I'm not facing the conflict with you because I want a particular version of you. And so I know how to have that version of you that I can accept. And it's just by me giving you what the heck you want. And then we have some semblance of peace, but it's a false peace. And when I realized, like, no, this is not loving to her, to just give her whatever she wants so I can get the version of her that I can deal with. Like, no, I need to be able to speak the truth in love for her. And, you know, ultimately, happy wife, happy life. We need to realize happiness is an inside job. It's like, in a healthy way, her happiness is not my responsibility in a healthy way. I mean, there's an unhealthy way to interpret that of like, nope, you do it. I'm gonna do whatever I want. You cheer up about it. But to be able to say, no, like I'm responsible for learning how to maintain peace in my day-to-day life. And I need to find out what brings me authentic joy that's not at the expense of other people so that I can live in a place of peace, even when everything is at a state of unrest. And if you have two people living out that mature understanding of happiness, you can have a happy marriage. But if I'm living as no, my happiness is your responsibility. And if I'm not happy, it must be because of you. That just creates, I think, a toxic and cocktail.
And what was it like for you as he sort of tried to placate you perhaps and then started changing tactics?
It was hard, and I don't want people to think, oh, he was giving me whatever I want, or he'd have these tantrums, and then he's just like, oh, I'll give it to her, because no, there were just certain real things happening, and I was having baby after baby after baby and not coming up for a breath and becoming incredibly resentful, and it was very hard on top of having a sick child and really judgmental, either family members or whatever, and it was just like, hello, I'm drowning. Do you see me? Hello, the workout can wait, or the talks can wait. Like, I need you. And it's just like, I was getting like angry and frustrated, but at the same time, it was also my own brokenness that amplified that as well, you know, that I didn't deal with. So it made it even worse. But I think that was the other thing that was really difficult and has been in our marriage, but it's just been such a blessing because I wouldn't have it any other way, is our children and the level of just like, I felt like a baby machine. Like it was just like constant. I love my kids. I wouldn't change it. And I thank God for Mother Church and the guidance in just having that, her lead. Like we tried NFP, but I felt like it was just a pause in pregnancy, to be honest, you know, but it's good and it can work. But it didn't for me because I was either breastfeeding or I was pregnant. Like that was it. It was just like there was no, because my cycle wasn't coming back because of the breastfeeding. So it literally was like every 2 years or less than that. After 16 months, I was pregnant. But if it were up to me, in all honesty, the level and even emotionally where I was at, or the postpartum I've experienced, that I probably wouldn't have had that next baby because it would have been too hard. And I'm like, I can't handle it. But God can see what I can handle beyond my issues or emotions or this or that. He's like, no, you can. I'm with you. Like, and I did at one point, you know, I was crying and I'm like so overwhelmed, and I was praying like, why, Lord, do you keep, like, I love my kids, but I feel so broken in my body and like emotionally, and this is like so much, like just like, and I felt like one day he said to me in adoration that, Crystalina, every time I put life in your womb, I am leaving my fingerprint inside there of all the grace and everything you need for that baby I'm giving you. Like, I am with you in this. Like, it's again that Jesus of like, I'm going to bat. I'm here. I'm not leaving. Like, I've got you. Like, and that's what we want, right? But because it feels like he's so far away and not like here and tangible, it's just like, you're not really here.
And I think a lot of Catholic couples, particular women, this is another point of false shame. Of like, I'm not overjoyed by my fourth pregnancy in 2 years, you know, and the fact that I'm really having a hard time with this. I'm not a good Catholic mom.
Yes,
like, this is a big issue.
Could you talk to that? Could you talk to the many beautiful women who are watching this who just feel like, you've heard Jim Gaffigan's joke about if you want to know what it's like having a fourth baby, just imagine you're drowning and someone hands you a baby while you're drowning. And it's such a beautiful thing to say. But yeah, could you give advice to the woman who's watching right now and is just like, I am tapped out, and I feel shame that I'm tapped out, and I don't know what to do?
You don't feel like yourself at all. It's like, and then you're like, who am I? You know, because all you're doing is like giving and going and serving and not sleeping, and like the life is being taken out of you, drawn out of you. Like, you know, it's a lot, and you feel beat up. But at the end of the day, God's grace is sufficient. He will give you everything you need, but it's okay to feel that brokenness. It's okay to feel like, I don't know how I'm going to handle this. Like, this is too much. It's okay to cry if you flip that pregnancy test over and like just start bawling, like, how am I going to do this? Well, you're not going to do this. But if you can look at it like, okay, God is going to do this with you, will really help you. But there is a level sometimes of just like, it's too much. It was crushing me, I felt. But at the same time, I loved my kids. I wouldn't do it any other way. And I thank God. And I look back now to the 11 pregnancies. I mean, we have our 8 kids, but I've had 11 pregnancies. And we've had 3 miscarriages, and those were really hard. And I was going through so much emotionally at the time. And then I'm thinking, because I was going through so much, did that cause it? There was a lot of guilt. Like, was there something that I did? Like, you start self-shaming because you feel like you're broken and you're inadequate and something's wrong with your body. And like, what did I do? And you start like, but at the same time, God gives life, God takes life. And honestly, sometimes I feel those miscarriages are those little soldiers just going to bat for you and your family up there, just praying for you, wanting you, incessantly like giving graces to you. And I know the second that I die, okay, this is my own belief. This isn't like a theological thing, but I, as a mom, I know this millisecond I die,
My wife says
my
the same.
babies are going to be right there looking at me and leading me to God. Good or bad, they're there. And I'm excited.
It's funny,
I get to
my
see
wife
them.
was having an argument with this theology student who was talking about, unbaptized babies. And he's like, well, actually, and she's like, I will rip your freaking face off. She didn't say that, but everything in her.
Like, let's go.
Yeah. I'm like, you
Throw
need
down.
to sit this one out. Okay?
Take my word.
But advice for women and men who are both dealing with this.
No, I know.
And maybe what's the advice you wish you were given? Real quick, I know for me, I was going through a rough part of our marriage. When we moved to Steubenville and my wife hit rock bottom as far as physically, I just needed space. And I went on this, Scott Hahn invited me to this Opus Dei retreat. And I went and I realized I don't want to lecture. I want to lay in bed and watch a movie. That's what haven't
check
done
out,
it.
yes.
And maybe it was a bit of dissociation, but also it was just, I just need to lay down. I guess that's kind of I want the down and dirty advice like that.
Yeah.
To men and women who would feel like they're drowning right now.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, when we found out we were expecting our first, it was joy. I mean, it was just pure joy. Like, here we go.
fear,
Like, we were
but
hoping, to be able to have a big family. And I mean, I think we put 10 miraculous medals on the altar of our wedding, in hopes and expectations for 10 kids.
Did you actually end up keeping them all?
What did you do with all the medals?
No, we have them.
We've got them.
So great. I've lost everything I've had for more than 2 weeks.
So, but when we found out we were expecting our second, we were actually in the hospital with our firstborn, overwhelmed, sleep deprived, health issues, and then the pregnancy test, and Crystal was.
I flipped that thing over and I was like, I'm sitting here. We're in a hospital. I'm like, this is what I felt like, oh my gosh, are all my kids going to be like this? I mean, it was serious. But he almost died. And I was like, oh, this is scary. And then I flip over that pregnancy because I was like so sick. I mean, and I was barely eating anything because he had to have my breast milk and he only could have 3 foods. And my zeros were falling off of me. It was so bad, And I just felt sick, and we took a pregnancy test and I flipped that thing over. And Jason comes walking towards me, and I'm like,
You bastard.
no, I was like, I'm like at the time, everything came out of me, Matt, in that moment. I chucked that thing.
I was like, have you seen the Matrix?
Have
you seen Matrix? How Neo? Just like,
I chucked that thing at him.
Now I've gotten so good I can just go boom, and they all just like.
I was bawling and I was crying, and that's where I was. And that was okay. That is okay. That I responded that way. It doesn't make me less or a bad mom, or they don't want my kids. You're okay. Allow yourself to feel how you're feeling without worrying about judgment of other people. And shame on them for judging you. I mean, these people that think that they can look down on you and just
it's like they want a Christianity that isn't even human.
Yeah.
Kimberly Hahn has a story of
garbage.
bringing her kids to daily mass, and she was late a little bit. And after Holy Mass, a woman turned around and said, if you can't get your kids to church on time, maybe you shouldn't come at all.
Oh my God.
If Kimberly told me she punched that woman in the nose, I think that would be very
Just
okay.
war theory applied in Prince practice.
So.
Oh my God.
Yeah, no, but that's really helpful, that kind of advice.